Hello. Hi, Hunter and everyone. So nice to see you. I'm so happy to be here.
So happy to have you. Where are you calling in from?
Queens, New York. How about you?
I am also in Queens, New York. Can I see you out my window?
I know. Where are you in Queens, New York?
Here we go. Whoop whoop. I'm in Astoria.
All right, we are close by. I'm in Sunnyside.
Oh
So we'll
yeah.
meet
Hey
up after
neighbor.
this.
Yeah, okay, cool. We'll get lunch. We'll get coffee. We'll talk. That's so
Exactly.
fun. I love the painting behind you. That's pretty rad.
Thank you. It's original by my husband. He's a painter.
Oh, very, very cool.
Yeah.
I love that. So tell me a bit about you, your journey. You've been working with it. You've created this company for over 12 years now. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Been at
Yeah,
this
yeah.
for a while. So my name is Adda Birnir, as Hunter said, and I founded this company, Skillcrush, 12 years ago in 2012. And the inspiration for it really came from my own journey. So I was a liberal arts college major graduate. My degrees were in art and African American studies.
Hmm.
And I came into the working world. I graduated right prior to the financial crisis in 2008. So I got to sort of, get swept up in all of that and ride that roller coaster along with everyone else.
Mhm.
And there was a lot, obviously, it was not, the easiest time in my life, but there was a lot of really valuable lessons learned. And a big, takeaway I took from that experience was that I really wanted to have some really clear, tangible, hard skills to match with all the soft skills that I came out of college with in order to be employable. And fortunately for me, I was really interested in tech. I had gotten a lot of exposure to technology, actually through art, which we can talk about a little bit later. So I was not a computer science graduate, but I had a lot of exposure to skills and tools that actually have served me really well in my technical career. And basically, I made the transition. So I went from being a non-technical type, project management, that kind of stuff, to actually working as a software engineer. And I did it without going back to college. And it was not an easy process. It was not a straightforward process, but it was possible. And when I did it, it really changed my career trajectory extremely quickly and really radically. And that inspired me to explore the possibility of helping other people do the same.
I love that. I came out of school around the same time. Chuck Schumer was actually our keynote speaker for my graduation, and his
Okay.
speech pretty much was, yeah,
Good
this
luck
is
to
a,
you.
yeah, pretty much. He was like, yeah, this is a
Maybe you
really bad
should
time.
stay. Just don't graduate right now. Yeah.
Yeah, he was just like,
Yeah.
hang in there.
Yeah.
Like, thanks, Chuck.
Yep. Not, yeah. But you know what? I'm really grateful for this. So, I mean, to put a little bit more of detail in it, I did literally get laid off. I actually, there was one company I was at, it went through a massive round of layoffs. I didn't lose my job, but I was like, this is not good. So I went to a more secure job, which I got laid off 6 weeks later. And yeah, but it was good for me. I was lucky at the time to be young and not have a lot of responsibility. So ultimately, I could manage that situation, and it really forced me to take some risks and put myself in some uncomfortable situations, one of which was to try to learn technical skills, which I was very intimidated by at the time, and had thought about for a long time, but it hadn't actually pulled the trigger on. And so that sort of like pushed me into it. And then what I learned in that process was that I had no reason to have been so scared by it. It was not scary. It was totally much more straightforward than I had anticipated. And it was also much, much more creative and interesting and sort of exciting in that way. And these were all the things that, like, I definitely remember this feeling of feeling like, oh, I'm Alice and I have fallen through the looking glass. And there's a whole world of technology. And, mind you, again, this is like 2008, 2009, but it was like, wow, I knew this world was there, but I didn't understand
Mm.
what it was really like. And having even just like the littlest amount of skill kind of opened that whole world up for me. And it was truly, I mean, life changing. And so I was like, whoa, what am I going to do? And then also, too, like the other thing you recognize, which is going to be news to no one on this call, is that it was an amazing, huge world with a lot of opportunity, and it was not diverse at all. So, um, it really started off completely self-serving. I was like, I need to stop. I don't know, it's just a sea of dudes in all directions. And like, don't get me wrong, I love dudes. I'm married to a dude. I have 2 little dudes. But you know, it was like, no, this isn't gonna work for me. So yeah, anyway.
No one wants to be the only in the room.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I love hearing how you took those as opportunities to learn and then look at this trajectory. You ended up creating a company and it thriving and now it's sold and that's
Yeah, now I get to keep doing it, which is
yeah,
amazing at PowerToFly. And I mean,
exactly.
yeah, so
You never know the trajectory, right? Like you really saw these hurdles as opportunities.
yeah, and it's funny too, because it's also like I'm going through my own sort of career pivot at this moment, right? Like I
Right.
had been a founder for 12 years and now I'm having to figure out what does it mean to be a part of a bigger company and what is that going to
Mhm.
look like for me? So it's just to say that change is a constant. And I think we're always in the process of having to upskill. And yeah, there's so many different directions to go in terms of skills and what skills are valuable. And we have specifically focused at Skillcrush on technical skills and technical skills in the web development space, which have been a very, very good place to invest in terms of investing in your own skill development in terms of the sort of return on investment that we've been able to see with our students. So like a classic trajectory for us is, we work with a lot of like teachers, administrative assistants, nurses, customer service people, a lot of people who are kind of, I mean, it does vary, moms coming back to work,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff, in terms of helping them upskill and really sort of up level in terms of their opportunities, both from a salaried income perspective, but also sort of a growth perspective, like the growth trajectory of their jobs, and also really importantly, like creative fulfillment. Like that's really, really important to us. And it's really important to our students. I see over and over again is that like often, yes, like they do want flexibility. They want a high salary. They want growth opportunities. Of course, who doesn't want those things? Those are just like, everyone should have them and universal health care. But anyway,
Yeah.
but that said, like like at the end of the day, if that's what you have, but you still hate your job, it's kind of like
Yeah.
so yeah, but what
Yeah.
we see, they really love their jobs, and that's kind of the best situation.
Absolutely. And I imagine coming from the creative background that you have, and clearly you are inspired by creativity, hence your husband's work behind you as well, that has become a core principle and value of how you have built what you've built and how you want to inspire others to stay creative, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where I came from, a non-traditional background into technology. So I came into software engineering with a background in art and specifically digital photography, which there was there had been sort of questions before this talk. And one of them was, what was the first technical skill you learned that really inspired you? And I feel like it would be really easy for me to say, oh, I learned HTML and CSS and built a website. But the truth is that wasn't the first technical skill I learned. That was actually quite far down the road. And the first technical skill I really learned was a version of Adobe Photoshop before it was bought by Adobe. And I learned to design websites and then this was like when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And it was really came from like an artistic desire on my
Early
part.
adopter, as we like to say.
Yes, exactly. But it's funny because a lot of people we talked to like did MySpace. That was kind of their
Mhm.
first exposure.
Mhm.
So, and I bring this up just to remind people that those are legitimate technical skills, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's so easy to think of it as something different and other and harder, but it's not. It's stuff that you probably are already doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was really the genesis for me. And I came out of an interest in, art and design, and then it evolved into photography. And in college specifically, it was when everything was transitioning from analog to digital photography at the sort of
Yeah.
art level. And I had to get very, very good at Adobe Photoshop again then.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that actually is what ended up being my entree into the tech world, is that I got a job as a photo editor at an online magazine. I use quotes because it was like photo cropper and uploader. um, But that was a legitimate technical skill, and that gave me, you know, the opportunity to meet software developers and designers and you know, all of those people and get into it. But yes, my entree into it was absolutely artistic, not like I never took a computer science class. I would never, like, it literally didn't even cross my mind one time in college to go do that, because that felt so divorced from anything I was interested in, even though it wasn't. But you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I completely identify. I also had the digital photography as one of my careers hats for a long time. And then it was really during pandemic and working with Power2Fly that I was like, oh, I work for a startup. Oh, I'm in tech now. Like it was a very
Mhm.
slow burn for me to realize my own position that I was in.
Yes. And Hunter, I have a lot of other things that we can talk about. So
Oh,
you
yes,
can.
yes, 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 definitely. So, what are the most in-demand skills today, and how can someone with no tech background start learning them?
Yeah. So we have always focused on web development, and that is basically a subset of software engineering that is focused specifically on building websites, so stuff that you're going to access through your browser. And that's just worth calling out. It's because like it is a subset, and it happens. The part of the reason that we do it is that it is both extremely high in demand and relatively easy to get into. Like the barrier to entry is relatively low from a technical standpoint. Obviously, there's extremely fancy, you know, complex things that lots of web developers are doing, but not at the junior kind of level. So it's really possible for people to do our course for you know, for 6 to 12 months, depending on, you know, their time frame, and get an entry level job as a junior, you know, engineer. I feel like you asked more complicated question. And oh, demand. And yes. So the thing I would say though, obviously today, is that AI is the hot topic.
Mm,
So, you know, the thing with AI and sort of any kind of AI skills from a development perspective is that that's actually a pretty advanced skill set, because you have to have a really solid understanding of at least one programming language. So although it is really in demand, I just want to give the caveat that it's not really like a super entry level kind of thing. We do teach it, but basically in order to learn sort of foundational AI skills at Skillcrush, you would have to go through our entire full stack developer track, and then go into learning about the AI stuff.
mm,
And the other thing I will say is that, just to really quickly answer your question, the full stack developers are always in highest
right.
demand. And the reason for that is because they're kind of a 2-for-1 deal. You get a front end developer and a back end developer in one. And so you know, as a full stack developer, when you're looking for jobs, you also have 3 times the amount of jobs to look, you know, that you're reasonably qualified to do, because you can apply to front end jobs, back end jobs, and full stack jobs.
Yeah.
So
I imagine also if you're looking at jobs with like startups, you're a very valuable asset if you're a full stack.
yes, yes. And you can command a higher salary than somebody who's specialized in either one of those fields, but it's still, it's like, it's a deal for both people in the arrangement, right? Because like the employer doesn't pay double the salary, but you can make more. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Totally.
kind of, you know, the majority of our students at this point do full stack development. That's what they learn with us. And then we also teach UI UX design, which
Mm,
is also awesome. Of course, there are less jobs, just because in general, when you look at a standard sort of engineering or product organization, you're going to have many more engineers and you're going to have designers. It doesn't mean there isn't a lot of jobs. And you know, I think the demand for designers and the supply of designers kind of matches each other. So we tend to have a fair number of students do design, but not as many as do engineering, and that pretty much matches the demand on the employer side. So
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Well, it sounds like it's a pretty well-rounded curriculum there or opportunities.
we try.
Yeah. So talk to me about, I'd love to hear more about, mentorship. We talk a lot about here at Power2Fly. It's so important for career development, for educational, continuous learning. So talk to me about the mentor-led courses that help students overcome these challenges and stay motivated throughout their upskilling journeys.
Yeah. So, you know, this really comes from a key insight from my own experience. And Emily Davis, who is my chief product officer, who's also been at the company she's basically my co-founder, she's not literally my co-founder. She has a very similar story. So we both transitioned into software engineering after college without getting degrees in that. And her story is similar to mine in that she basically had friends or acquaintances through work who helped her do it, who basically mentored her through the process. And I can say the same. And so through that process, that lived experience that we both had, we saw the value of that and how important it was for us to have people that we could reach out to with questions, people who guide us and say, learn this, not that. No, don't get distracted with that over there. You're going to hear this. That's not true. Also sometimes like really basic stuff. Like I remember I was asking my friend a question and he like did the like, let me Google that for you. And that was a great lesson for me because I was like, oh, I could cut out the middleman here and just Google that myself. But so mentors play a lot of really important roles. But anyways, the thing is that like she and I were really, really fortunate to be in a position in life and in our communities and networks that we had those people available to us. And that obviously isn't true for everybody. And that was kind of that was a major part of the inspiration of Skillcrush of being like, okay, how do we scale this kind of mentorship? How do we make it available to anybody who wants it, who has access to the internet? And how do we make sure that it's not just like a total free for all? And that's really what the courses are all about. And so the way that it works at Skillcrush, as opposed to sort of other alternatives that are that are available online, is that you will always have access to an instructor who both is there to instruct you and help you with the like technical learning, but they also offer mentorship. And so what this looks like in practice is that they are available to you over email anytime you want. We also do you can also meet with them for 30 minutes to chat about any topic that you want. And then we also have them available on Slack, as well as every other student who's ever gone through Skillcrush. So that's kind of some of the ways that we, embed mentorship in every aspect of what we're doing. Student experience.
I love that. And so the community stays alive too on Slack. You're saying there's the graduates stay in there if they like.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is like we make a really big deal out of when students get jobs the first time, but my favorite thing is when they come back to tell us like, I got a promotion. They like to tell me when they cross the $100,000 mark in their salaries, which is usually like their second or third job. So yeah, our alumni are amazing and they're like what we live for. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Is there a particular story that you want to share from a Skillcrush student who made a remarkable career transition thanks to the upskilling?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many. We have a whole landing page if anyone's interested, but one that came to mind was a woman named Anna Kongs. And she basically, this is pretty recent. I mean, I think it was like sometime around the pandemic. She was living in the Southwest. I feel like it was either New Mexico or Arizona, I don't remember, but she sort of told a story about going on a walk or a hike with her dog and just being like, I can't do this anymore. She's a librarian, which by the way, librarians are amazing. And I have a lot to say about librarians, but basically she just was like, the amount of pay I'm getting to do this job and just like the circumstances not working for me, I need to do something different. And something, I don't know exactly, like led her to Skillcrush. She found Skillcrush, she enrolled, and like pretty much exactly 11 months after she had first enrolled in Skillcrush, not only had she gone through Skillcrush, gotten a job, but she'd actually moved all the way to Boston for that job and was working now at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute as a software developer. And importantly, she did this over the age of 40. And she has this story where she's like, it was hard, but like, it wasn't that hard, and I just like loved that. She was like, do it. Like, it's possible to make it happen. And even at sort of, like an advanced, I mean, it's crazy to think 40 is advanced, but, I think it's really easy to think that. And I think a lot of us feel that way, but anyway, I love Anna. That's a great story.
I love that story. And yeah, that's so wonderful and inspiring to hear for the over 40 thing too, because it is.
We also have over 50, even over 60.
Yeah. Like all up, Helen Sanchez will be talking about ageism later on today's summit, and you can be like, age discrimination starts at age 40.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, what's amazing to me is like, I've always said this, like concerns about age is a concern that knows no age is what I have seen with our students.
Mm-hmm,
So I will
mm-hmm.
have 20-year-olds say it to me, and I will have 60-year-olds say it to me, right? In the whole
Yeah,
gamut. So it's a really universal concern
yeah.
in the space of upskilling. But I think to your point, the data really, you know, and I think again, this is where like we really suffer from, like, you know, I feel like our sort of cultural and historical understanding of like what's proper, what's right is not keeping up with the pace of change.
Mm,
And the reality is that the pace of change is such that now in our lifetimes, we have to upskill constantly, change jobs multiple times in our lifetimes, et cetera. That's totally normal. In fact, it would
mhm.
be abnormal if you weren't making a change.
Right.
But you know, we have these sort of scripts and ideas of what's proper, what we should be doing at what ages, et cetera, and they really haven't kept up. So I think it's so easy for people to feel like they're the only one when actually they're everyone.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
so anyway, I'm just here
Yeah,
to tell you all.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's normal to be upskilling all the time, switching careers. What strategies have you found most effective for balancing work, life, and this important topic of learning and upskilling?
I mean, you know, one of the beauties of working in tech is that upskilling is so taken for granted that it's really embedded into the work that you do. So I do benefit from that. But I mean, I guess I'm sort of like, oh gosh, hard hitting questions here on this Wednesday. I mean, it's hard, right? Like I listen to a lot of podcasts, I read a lot, but I don't want to pretend like it's not hard to do. I mean, I think what's always a challenge is something we think a lot about at Skillcrush is like, why are you doing it and for how, like, what do you need to do? Why are you doing it? And for how long do you need to do it for before you really
Mm,
sort of achieve a goal? And I think that is really important, especially if you're trying to achieve something really, really, you know, seismic, right? Like I would say like for myself personally at this point in my career, I'm upskilling constantly, but it's sort of iteration on my role as opposed to making a really big pivot. And I think when you're making a really big pivot, it's really important to sort of put some boundaries on it, right? And just be like, I'm going to do this for this amount of time and I expect to see this result. And obviously be realistic about that, which is a lot easier said than done.
mm,
But
mm.
yeah. And I think sometimes, you know, depending on the size of the change in your circumstances, it's going to be out of balance for a period of time. So that's also something to just be realistic about, you know?
Right. Giving ourselves that grace period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
knowing and trusting it's not going to be forever.
Right. This too shall
Yeah.
pass. Yeah, we
Yes.
keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
So you expressed earlier you were intimidated to learn new tech things,
Mhm.
but then once you got into it, it actually came quite naturally to you and you're in your zone. What advice would you give to other folks that maybe have that similar feelings of feeling intimidated by the idea of learning new skills, especially in this tech environment that is constantly changing and evolving?
Yeah. You know, relatively early in my entrepreneurship journey, I was taught the 4 stages of competency. Have you ever encountered this? There's a really good diagram that I always think, and I wish I could show it to everyone. But basically, the idea is that before you know anything, so this would predate this period that you're talking about, where you're aware of a skill but you're afraid of it,
Mm,
about learning it. So before that, you're just blissfully going along and being like, I'm great, I know everything, right? Because you're not even aware that this thing exists. And that's called unconscious incompetence. So you're not good at something, but you don't even know to care. So then what
mhm,
happens is you go into this zone called conscious incompetence. And this is where you know that there's a skill out there and you know you don't have it and you feel pretty terrible. And there's the graph shows basically how like your feelings go, "Ooh," like you basically take a big dip. You're like, oh God.
mhm,
And I would just say that going through that zone is really hard, right? And the thing that'll happen to people and happen to me is like you'll just get stuck. Like you'll just be at this point down here feeling really bad about yourself, convinced that you're never going to be able to learn this skill and just not taking any action because of how bad you feel. Um, and I think, you know, the greatest learning in my life, I think, with regards to this, is just recognizing that this is a phase on the path to the next phase, which is conscious competence, and then unconscious unconscious competence. That means it's so easy for you. You just do it like you're breathing.
Yeah.
And I just find like, and I have to remind myself of this all the time. Like I think about this constantly. Like I can't tell you the number, like, listen, my experience of onboarding at PowerToFly has been like really intense. Like I spent 12 years building a company. I knew every nook and cranny. I was the ultimate knower of all the knowledge. And here I am in a new company and I know nothing, you know, like I literally
On the
sent a meme
block.
today. I'm tabula rasa. I know nothing. So, you know, don't like, if there is like documentation or if there is like an obvious place that you all like know to go and look for a thing, like I don't know what that is. And that's
Right.
really hard. And it gets harder the older we are, I think, because it's more inconsistent with sort of like the experiences we have in other parts of our life. Like I think it's harder to feel this way once you felt the other way, right? When you felt
Right.
really competent at
Yeah.
something. And so I guess for me, like it's just, and I, you know, I think about this all the time. Like I'll be learning a new skill that's totally unrelated to work, like knitting or sewing or something, you know what I mean? And, or running, right? Like it's just, it's like we have to go through this a million times and it is the only path to the promised land, right? But it's just the more reps we get of just experiencing that dip and then experiencing the upswing, I think the better we are all, like we all are. So to put this back to this question of like, what was it like and how do you deal with it? Like the only path forward is to like expose yourself and to start and just tolerate how uncomfortable it is. And the
Mhm.
better you get at tolerating that discomfort, like truly, the better like everything will be in your career and life, frankly. Yeah, but I don't know. It's hard.
Exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy, exactly.
Yeah.
It all comes back to exposure therapy. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, learning new things is hard. If you could wave a magic wand and learn one new skill magically, what would it be? If you could just have it today that you could master.
Mm,
Yes.
that's a really, really good question. I think it would just be, it would like be to speak another language that's like radically different than English, you know?
Yeah.
So I think for me, like Chinese, if I could speak Chinese tomorrow, like that would, because I think like, you know, if I talk about how learning programming skills opened up a whole world to me, like the worlds that are available to you when you speak other languages are ginormous. So, and like, I know how, or I'm stuck in I'm terrified of trying to learn Chinese spot. So this is good. I'm giving the advice that I need to hear about.
I
Yeah.
love it. Well,
Yeah.
this has been so wonderful. Welcome to the Power to Fly family. I'm so happy that we got to do this today. How can folks stay connected with you if they want to ask you questions? Yeah, you.
Yeah. So certainly at skillcrush.com, you can sign up for our free coding camp, which is a free course that we offer that has a whole bunch of
Yeah.
lessons on a bunch of interesting topics. So check that out. I'm available at Adda@skillcrush.com. You can always send me an email. I'm also on LinkedIn. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. And then of course, Power to Fly. I mean, we are part of the Power to Fly family. So we're here to stay. Watch out.
Yeah.
You're stuck with us. So
Well, thank you so much. I guess I'll see you around running around Sunnyside, my neighbor
yeah.
friend.
Yeah,
And
I literally do run in Astoria, so you literally will see me.
yeah, you'll see him on my you can spot me on a blue bike or with a tiny chihuahua.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Nice. All right.
Okay. Well, I look forward to the next time we chat and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for making the time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And now